A recent combination of things in my personal life and the current state of the world got me thinking a lot about trust. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about that today and hopefully explain and refine some of my thoughts on the topic. To have trust between just yourself and another, there has to be a degree to which each of you knows that the other would sacrifice to maintain the well being of both parties. There's a limited number of ways that belief can be built, and I think that the most reliable one, without being thrown into a situation that creates a shared trauma bond, is through costly signaling. For anyone unfamiliar, costly signaling is an action, trait, or behavior that is expensive or difficult to fake, and it makes it easier to convince others of your intentions. On a small scale, that would be like me admitting that this is my first video I've ever posted, and that I'm kind of nervous. But despite that, I think that my immediate discomfort will be outweighed by the prompting of people to consider what I'm talking about and hopefully spark some discussion. Hopefully, that got you to think, wow, this guy seems really genuine, and I'd really like to help him by talking about this in the comments. Even if it didn't, you still get the picture. A potentially more helpful version of this would be maybe the kindling of a relationship between you and somebody else. You might exchange deeper and deeper parts of yourselves, and it would subtly prove to the other person that you believe that they won't use this potentially damaging information against you, and vice versa. The longer that this goes on, and the more potentially damaging the information exchanged becomes, the more trust is conveyed. Moving up a level, in a tight-knit community, the strength of the trust that you would expect to see between two friends or two romantic partners goes down slightly, but if done correctly, not by too much. Take, for instance, a small town in the middle of nowhere. Everybody there understands each other's role in the community. What and how they contribute to the community is known and understood well enough that there's very little or often no need at all for any oversight of those jobs. The trust is built over time by labor and or dedication shown to the community. It can be sped up with costly signaling as well. For instance, if I were raising chickens, let's say, I might bring some free eggs over to some of my neighbors. If I wasn't truly dedicated to the community and the people in it, it'd be kind of silly and costly for me to bring over the eggs that I put my blood, sweat, and tears into, completely free of charge. Obviously, this is a simplified model, but I think that the foundation is sturdy and would hold up when tested against some nuance. The next level up is where I think it becomes really interesting, and that's on a societal level of trust. Once we get to a societal level, the way I see it is that we have three options for generating high levels of trust. Since we're too big in scale for you to see all of your neighbors, so to speak, we can't as easily discern the sincerity and dedication of each person on our own. This means that we have to blindly trust the ethics, desires, and expectations each person brings, trust a person with near uncontested power to control for that, or trust a system. Just believing in the goodness of others is a rather unlikely option, in my opinion, and to defend that, I just have to point out that society tends to the haves tend to believe that the have-nots are just lazy or stupid, and that the have-nots tend to believe that the haves are undeserving of what they have. If you want to contest that, I'd love to hear where you're coming from in the comments. Next would be a single or small group of people leading. And that actually has an abundance of historical examples, and generally boils down, in my opinion, to a cult of personality. Rather than trusting each individual in society, we put an unfathomable amount of trust into a single leader, and we believe that they're not only smarter than us, not just less corruptible than Jesus Christ himself, but also somehow also always has our best interests at heart. Luckily for the select few that were able to hold these positions of power in history, Only a large enough percentage of the population to stave off a coup is required to believe this, and the rest just have to be convinced or complacent enough to allow it to happen. Lastly, I think that the most complex option, but also the most viable one, though that might be a belief that is a product of the system I grew up in, it would be a system. I think that it could be done in a couple of ways. The most common being election cycles that, in theory, balance out the public's wants and needs, lest the elected official is replaced with somebody who is more up to the task. Another interesting and potentially viable system would be essentially privatizing everything and treating each citizen who chooses to live there as an investor. This would allow you to create a higher or lower barrier of entry, depending on what you wanted, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be a monetary one. It would allow everybody who lives there to have the confidence that every citizen passed whatever barrier to entry that was, but, that would be a whole other can of worms that I can't really get into right now, or rather, I won't get into right now. Even if none of those specific examples particularly sparked an idea or a conversation, I think it's extremely important for us to think about and discuss these types of things, just for our personal and societal benefit. Understanding trust from the one-on-one all the way up to societal trust is how we communicate more effectively and make the world a better place for the rest of us. Don't ever stop thinking. See you next time.